Uh, so we come to the first presentation of the day, and this is by Dr. Rebecca Goolsby from the Office of Naval Research, the US Navy. Now, she received her doctorate from the University of Washington in cultural anthropology with a special interest in Southeast Asia and West Africa, and she's best known for her researches on social cyber attack, civil unrest, and the internet. So very much at the cutting edge of our social media and social technology. It's a pleasure to welcome you, Rebecca. We look forward to your talk. Information technology and the disaster response.
Actually, this will work.
Sure?
Yes. Yeah, this will work.
All right, we'll leave it there.
I was worried that there was no ledge for the computer.
Do you want a time?
Yeah, go ahead, give me time, shall we? I am very pleased to be here today, but I must say that I am talking for myself, not for my organization. I won't be presenting any of the research that we do or any of the stuff that we're working on. Instead, I wanted to focus on what you needed, okay? What do health communities, non-government organizations need to change the world? I've worked with non-government organizations for many years, for most of my 25-year career, and I have worked both with dozens of non-government organizations as well as with the military. And so I'm going to be focusing on what I've learned from that as much as what I've learned, and combine with that what I've learned in my research for the military. Let me see. Oh, there it is. So, as you know, a lot of health organizations and foundations and non-government organizations are only now getting onto the internet. They are newbies, new people. Look at the Shin Foundation only has 59 tweets when I captured the screen just yesterday or the day before, and most of them have been during this meeting. Now, I'm an anthropologist, and so I've been worked with many cultures for many years, and information technology has transfixed me from the very beginning. There are 7 billion people in the world, 6.8 billion cell phones. What it really means is that our numbers and counting are really off. We really don't know how many people there are in the world. Now, I asked my friends who come back from anthropology field trips from all over the world how the cell phones changed them. This is my favorite story. I have a friend who works in Sierra Leone, and we left out for field work on the same day, 28 years ago. And he got in his Land Rover. He drove 2 days to the end of the road, got out, put on his backpack, walked another day to get to his field site. He's been doing that every summer, every year since. Same field work, same field. I asked him, how has a cell phone changed the way you do your job? And he thought, and he went, wow. And he said, now they text me what they want me to bring while I'm still in Seattle. So if they want something big, then I'll buy it, in town, put it in the Land Rover, and they'll meet him at the end of the road and take it back with them to the village. When the chief headman has a belt, a tribal belt, and he has 4 or 5 cell phones on the belt now, okay? And he goes to the top of the ridge and he looks for signal, and he looks which one is working, battery life, all that jazz. And he texts the guys in the market to find out what the cost of goats are in the marketplace. Then he texts people who live along the road to see if there are bandits in the area. And then he does weather on the phone, and he does cost-benefit analysis to figure out whether or not he's going to take the goats. He gets there, and the phones are used, M-Pesa is used to transfer money so that when he goes back, he is not going to be set upon by bandits because he has nothing but a cheap old cell phone in order to get back with. He says, that's how it's changed everything. Oh, and by the way, since he has to visit those people face-to-face coming back, bring them little presents, marriages are occurring among communities that never talk to each other. And communal relationships are beginning to develop through these marriages with other tribes that are even outside of the networks they even considered. So he says, in many ways, the cell phone has actually worked counter to what people think, to improve social cohesion. Okay, forward. Now, in my research, I've discovered this revolutionary change has three parts. There's the technical part that everybody talks about, pipes and wires and architectures. There's a social part that people also sometimes talk about, how it changes your relationships with friends. And there's this socio-technical part. This is a really old word that goes back to the 60s. Remember McLuhan and television as a medium, all these messages that we had about how technology was changing our world back in the 60s. And it means the new behaviors and the new social innovations that occur because you have this technology available. So Arab Spring, people began to do ad hoc synchronization of crowds. That's what socio-technical behavior is. Now, one socio-technical behavior you've probably heard of is crowdsourcing. It's a very hot topic, and it's a very simple topic, but practice is very difficult. The book of crowdsourcing occurs in 2008, although Jeff Howe was discussing this as early as 2007. And he has a wonderful book. You only have to read the last chapter, chapter 11, in which he lays out all the rules for how to build a good crowdsourcing technique, and I highly recommend the book. Here are 4 of the, I think, 10 steps in all. Break down the task into very simple parts. Present the parts to the audience. People are not asked to do hard things. You just give them just give a piece of information, solve a small problem, and then the platform helps to put it back together. It makes in reaching big crowds really easy and really fast, and you can use platforms like wikis and websites and apps to not only reach people but also to bring them back together. It's a simple model, but in the real world, it's really not that easy. Okay, so this is the simple model of what people are supposed to do, but here's one of the canonical stories. There's this company called Threadless, and they're a bunch of graphic artists who design T-shirts, and they wanted to sell them on the internet, but they fought over which designs to choose. And so the web designer, who was not an artist, thought about this, and he designed a competition. So they put the T-shirt designs on the website, and the voters and the people could vote for them. And they didn't have to buy them, but the ones with the highest number of votes won the competition. Did 2 things. First, it helped them find out what the crowd thought would be good T-shirts. And secondly, it was a good estimate of how many T-shirts to run, so that they didn't have too much extra. So it had these 2 things. It was very, very successful. And the web designer, whom I know as a personal friend, retired at 26, a multimillionaire. Okay. Now, so I'm about to tell you a story that's not out there in common. This is Threadless. I'm about to tell you a story that people don't know, and that is the story didn't end there. They have to continually recruit new artists. They have forums to assist artists to figure out how to make winning T-shirts. Now, they had one forum, and it was very free-flowing, okay? Because remember, in the beginning, it's just a group of friends. And so they talk trash to each other. Oh, that's terrible. I hate that color, or things like that. Well, the web designer's brother wanted to be a T-shirt artist, and he was being bashed by this 14-year-old who had won 3 design competitions. And he's like, the kid is killing him, all right? And so he's really upset. He's really getting hurt, as your feelings can get really hurt on the internet because there is no mediating factor. And so he ended up having to design kind of a guppy tank, okay, a beginner's forum, where everyone had to be constructive and there were more rules. Crowdsourcing can create new social spaces, and those social spaces have to be managed if you are going to keep collegiality and keep it running. He had to keep the Shark Tank too, because people liked that, and that served its function. So managing the crowds means listening to them, not just giving them space and walking away. I have dozens of stories on why that's a bad idea. Crisis mapping is an example of crowdsourcing that you've probably all heard of. It was created by a woman named Ori Akula, and she was a blogger and an activist following the 2008 civil violence in Kenya. And it was picked up by Harvard and Tufts universities and put together in a crisis map for Haiti. And this became a very famous choice. But let's look at it, and people think that this is a great model for disaster response, but actually, I was there. It was not that fun, okay? Now, they'd gotten together a bunch of non-government organizations, and they borrowed a short code. A short code costs about $10,000 a month to run, and you need to set it up about 2 months in advance, which is why you don't see short codes a lot, okay? But someone gave it to them, and somebody else contacted radio stations and told the Haitians to text what they needed to the map. That's what they did. And the radio broadcast this, and they received over 10,000 messages in 5 days. They got 800 volunteers to translate with Crowdflower, which is another platform, but it had a lot of problems in the actual aftermath. First, it raised the expectations of people for rapid response. People had no idea also what to say. The radio announcers just said, text for help. So I was on the teams that tried to do the translations, mostly to look at how it was working. A lot of the prayers were prayers to the Loi, okay, to the spirits, because people didn't know what to say, okay, and they were just, they didn't know where help was coming from. They didn't give their locations. They didn't, they would give their name and nothing else. So there wasn't enough instruction for the people. And they had no idea who was on the other end of the phone, and we would never do it that way again. About 800 volunteers really got exhausted because it didn't prioritize the text. So you would get first in, first out. So the 36 golden hours is when people are likely to die, and so they didn't. Of the 10,000 messages, they only got through about half of them. Okay, and of course some of the most critical messages. And so they had huge volunteer techniques. So they advertised that they had 800 volunteers. Really, it was a core group of about 20 or 30, and they were pretty tired by the end of it. Let me see. Nowadays, we would use the standby task force, which was designed, they stood up after that. Jan Zemecki is one of my dear friends, and so there are now some trained volunteers that work in this area that are very good, and a number of trained volunteer groups that set up way in advance of disasters and train and have workshops and talk to each other a lot is how we do it. So using information, it requires a strategic communication plan. You have to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Now, this is where the military comes in, or at least the military has done a lot more theoretical work on strategic communication. And strategic communication involves the creation of a narrative. There's a story you tell about the events that explains what's going on, your objectives of what you plan to do and your group, participants, some full understanding of who's all involved, and roles, what different people can do, like the different kinds of volunteers you might have, and the role of the audience, the people who are getting it. They need to know what they're supposed to do too. And the rationale why people are working together to help people orient, to figure out whether or not they want to participate and how much they want to participate and all of that. Now, a narrative is a set of two things. It's all the symbols and stories and videos and memes that you have in the full narrative of what you're going to say. You might only give those in pieces, like a tweet at a time, or a tweet and a video and a blog post, or that sort of thing. But they all hang together as a story. Your deeds, what you do on the ground, speak much louder than your words, and so you better make sure those two stories are coordinated. So if this were a military environment, I would tell them, that you can't have a message of peace and liberty and then go out and arrest people, because that's going to get disconnected very quickly. You have to, and often non-government organizations and government organizations too have conflicting purposes, and you need to work that out before the disaster. I have lots of stories on that one, so that you can everyone can feel comfortable and know what to do, and there's not a lot of of disconnects between what you say and what you do. Uchaguzi as I told you before, the Kenyans. They put together a lot of innovative work, and the Ushahidi Foundation, which was Orikula's group, developed this map to map crisis in Kenya following that. So they used it first for a constitutional amendment in 2010, and they have been continuing to work on peace from 2008 to today. Okay, many organizations are involved, radio stations are involved, international organizations are involved. And in 2013, they monitored all the media, all the radio, because that was where a lot of the hate speech. And they tried to, and fights and fist fights and bar fights, anything that had to do with the elections. And when they found these locations, so people would text into the map. And when they found a problem starting, they would send out peace teams, and it might be a radio disc jockey and a local singer, or it might be a soccer player, or it might be some event, it might be some church meeting, and they would talk to people about the need to settle their issues amicably. It was very, very successful. Okay. So they had a ground game, and they had a cyber game, and they connected the two. They had a common message. Now, the Boston police started, it doesn't have to be this complicated, though. Boston police decided they were going to use Twitter about 3 years ago for community policing. So, but their strategy was not, we're going to sell Boston police like a brand of toothpaste. They said, we're going to do this as community policing. And so the top 26 cops, the police chief down the top 26 positions, all had to tweet every day. It took about 10 minutes, okay? But they tweeted on things the public affairs office told them to tweet about, traffic tie-ups, arson, burglary attempts, neighborhoods that you needed to watch out in, things that were happening, police things in their wheelhouse. And they retweeted stuff because these are people that interested them. And so all of the other police officers always read their feed. And they developed a following, all told, all of them, of about 20,000. Okay. The Boston Marathon bombing came as a surprise. They had a command center, and they were tweeting out on a Boston Marathon hashtag, and they told the crowd where to park, and they told the crowd when the racers were coming, and they told the people to move out of the way, get out of the road. And they were doing their normal police thing. They said it was usual. This was normal behavior. Talking on your cell phone was normal. And so when the bomb went off, John Daly, who was leading the thing, said the first thing he did was look at Twitter to see what the crowd knew. And the second thing he did was he announced it to the crowd, to the world, that a bombing had taken place. He took control of the room. He was a trusted resource. He was in his wheelhouse. He was doing what he was supposed to be doing. And he gave the crowd timely information. We're stopping the race, but we will resume. Okay, this kept the crowd on task. We want to finish the race. Our job as a crowd is we want to support the runners. And so he reassured people that this was not going to destroy the race. Okay, and he told people where to move. And this was in a matter of minutes. And this is what it looked like. This is about 10 minutes in. Okay, you saw before? This was about 10, 15 minutes in. It was really, really a rapid response. So what he did was crowd calming, okay? And then people began to spontaneously come up with help. They sent photographs. The restaurant set up tables and tweeted, hey, come sit at our tables. We're going to bring out water. You don't have to buy anything. And then the crowd itself began helping people and figuring out things and helping to connect other people, which lifted the burden off of the police station as well. People find her, having things like that going on. Now, of course, not all police stories are good. The New York Police Department keeps treating social media like they're selling toothpaste. And they decided to ask for good stories about New York police by on the NYPD hashtag just a few weeks ago, and you know, show us how the NYPD is engaging the community. And this is the kind of stuff they got them the Laughing Stock Award. Every narrative, no matter how good you are, no matter how well-meaning, has some sort of counter-narrative. In my world, we talk about adversaries, but in the real world, everybody is kind of like, you know, people complain, okay? People say, you know, they start rumors. They want to draw attention to themselves. They want to draw attention to their perspective and viewpoint. And so they are going to screw with your narrative. They're going to, in this case, disconnect the narrative from the deeds. And remember, you're all out there. You're all being viewed and exposed. So everything that you do can be photographed and videotaped. And so that's where you are. This is what people try to do in counter-narrative. They try to disconnect your words from your deeds, sling mud at you, make baseless accusations. They like to cast doubt on your competence, your honesty, your goals. They will encourage the crowd. See, it's really easy to make the crowds go negative. Getting them to be socially cohesive and positive takes a long time to do. You have to start early. They want to construct a different story that undermines your, and remember, they're going to use shocking images and crazy stuff in order to capture the 15 seconds of fame that they can get for that. This is what the health community needs to know. Get experience. Learn your crowds. Learn what other narratives are out there that might cross into your pathways so that you can at least know and compensate for them. You need to become a trusted resource in the community. In the military, they're never going to be trusted. They have to get contextualized trust. They have to be trusted in their in what they call their wheelhouse, in the set of responsibilities that is their responsibilities. They shouldn't screw around with that. They shouldn't play with that too much, because then that will counter the narrative of being the serious, truthful, honest actor in the space. You have to do that so that when it is your turn to lead, people respect you and honor you, even if they dislike you, even if they hate you. Networks are critical. Listen, listen, listen. Keep listening, and be careful what you ask for. As the New York Police Department found out, make sure that what you're asking for them to do is going to be interpreted in the right way. And be aware of counter-narratives so that you can plan accordingly. The problem of health is huge, and we have lots of technologies out there that we'll talk about in the working groups to help get information from the crowd, but it's only going to work if you have a good plan, if you have good rules for managing your own crowd. Remember, you have to manage your relationships among yourselves. There is conflict in your own crowds. All right? And the people need to be able to talk about those conflicts honestly, like the guppy tank and the shark tank. You know, people need to have those conflicts out there because they can be helpful in understanding each other's points of view and creating rules that all parties can respect. So even as we try in the networks that we may be forming here to work across cultures as well as time and space, you know, being able to speak honestly and to tolerate each other's differences, tolerate mistakes, tolerate faults. I suppose that's one of the messages I talk about every day. Whoops. One more thing. Okay. Only about 1% of the social media communities ever say a word. Actually, it's less than that. Okay. They never update their Facebook page. They never do anything like this, okay? So the next 10% or so validates. They like it, they update it, they retweet it, that sort of thing. That leaves everyone else. And so this is how Arab Spring happened. Most of the tweeting was done by expats who were completely safe. And the retweeting community was also expatriate. And they could never get more than 15,000 people into Tahrir Square. They tried to do Arab Spring twice before and failed both times. But what happened was the Tunisians watched them and tried to do it at the same time, but Tunisia only had 2 million people. So when 500,000 people went in the streets, that was all, that was it, okay? And it went into the stream because it went to Al Jazeera, which is a C-SPAN channel, and C-SPAN decided to, this Mubashir, decided to play the tape that these people send of this little tiny protest in this little tiny community. And the Arab the community started talking about it, and so that amplified the signal for that story. The Tunisian state TV thought they needed to reply to the story, and Tunisians had never heard of Twitter or this protest, and so they played 2 minutes of it on the state television, and the next day that was all she wrote. Everybody was out in the streets. So when the era that Ben Ali was gone 3 weeks later, so this expanded that narrative. So then it gave the Egyptians who hadn't been watching this new ideas, and people went to the mosques and people began talking to each other, and so rather than getting 15,000 people, they got 50,000 people. And that was that. They reached critical mass very, very rapidly. Do not think that, that any protest or situation is disconnected from your situation, because they all connect now. Okay, so the good news is that by talking you can become a leader. You can provide validations to the conversations that you think are worthy, and people will be extremely grateful for it. People really want to hear this, because remember, the people who are tweeting right now are very lonely in the health community. You know, look at Shen, 59 tweets, and you know, so by becoming more active in the community, the good news is that you can make a real serious difference in this conversation, and you can start something now. It's amazing. Okay, so this is the same slide I give to everyone. You can change the world. First, you have to listen and listen. Then you have to think about it and study it out. Collaborate, plan, discuss, and that means doing some cordial fighting with rules perhaps. Act, do, you know, make sure that what you say and what you do are together, and repeat. It is a continual dynamic process. Thank you. Oh, stay there. Mm-hmm. Oh, question.
Rebecca, thank you for a very important presentation. As somebody who has never tweeted and, who is not on Facebook, I'm always amazed at these presentations of the social media, and I wonder if I'm in the same world. But we have time for questions. So, yes, we have a few minutes. So do let's ask Rebecca. Start with Royston here.
Hi, Rebecca. We've got a number of challenges, really. One, I'm involved in the Rotary organisation that has 1.2 million Rotarians around the world. Mm-hmm. We've trying to put disaster operatives that are trained and accredited in every Rotary club mm-hmm. to act as this first responders. Mm-hmm. But Rotary and Rotarians are a bit like herding cats, yeah? Mm-hmm. It strikes me that this sort of social media intervention, linking them together, creating it as an action framework and also an education framework might be very interesting. Mm-hmm. Have you any thoughts on how that might possibly be achieved?
The Standby Task Force is one of the, I think, critical. Jen and her group have been doing this since Haiti. And they took their lessons learned from Haiti, and that's a great group to start with. The training is needed by everyone and everywhere, and training and education is probably one of my key issues right now. You know, right now the best place to get it would be, you know, probably Standby Task Force, but they're very specialized. So creating education systems for this is totally new territory. Remember, Haiti was 2010. So it's only 4 years. I'm surprised we've gotten as far as we have. But yeah, I think Rotarians should probably at least be talking to one another, finding best practice. Jen and I are writing, and several other people are writing a book, which I'm not sure when it's going to be out, to help partly with that. But yeah, we need training, and that's something that the health community can help do, and I'll certainly help develop that curriculum and get you in touch with the people to develop that curriculum. because I think it needs to be done. Well, you know where I am. Thank you.
Hang on.
Yep.
Any further questions for Rebecca? Yes. Somebody in the Chinese.
Dr. Rebecca,
Have-
那个
I need.
Take that. Let's see. Technology.
我非常关心，就
No,
是
no, wait.
Testing. Total one. No. One.
我非常关心在灾难应对中，这个信息技术，我指的是适合于更复杂的系统的这种信息技术，我把它叫复杂系统信息技术，就是不是基于统计信息的那种真正的人工智能的，比如说基于 predicates 基于谓词的这种推理的，就是把这些信息能够有机的整合起来，就是把大量不同的方案、观点或者成千上万人的建议，我关心的最后达到一个结果，就是说把这些基于不是基于统计的信息，就是不是线性的信息，然后都是些非线性的或者人的这些观点，尤其是一些有机的这些思想，把它整合起来，是基于人工智能的那种真正的人工智能，而是非统计的人工智能的技术处理方式。这就是您的在灾难应对里边，您所了解的，在这个方面您所了解的技术是谁的是最先进的？再一个，您对这种复杂系统的信息整合技术有什么展望？
Okay, this is about sentiment analysis and how to use unstructured data. I'm a well-known hater of sentiment analysis. It doesn't work. They use something called a bag of words technique. They use a Western view of what words mean in terms of negative and positive. It doesn't work for us. It won't work for you in a big way. So how do you do this? Content analysis might be helpful, but there are no good systems. I want to tell you this now. None. There's not a good one out there, okay? Probably the best thing to do is to look at the information that, and even if you had it, even if it were a good system, because remember, only 1% talks. It's not representative. So you need to look at the connection between Weibo and what's going on, blogs. Also, you have to put together things and what people are talking about face to face. If you do not have all three layers of that, the social media tends negative, or it moves in strange ways we don't understand yet. So this is an area of research. This is an area I would not want anyone to make a decision on this kind of information, because the research, the foundation research, is now just starting. There we go. Thank you. But there is things we can do. Now I will talk to you people offline. They need to get going.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. I'm interested in technopathology and the impact it has on the human mind. I'm always very encouraged when I hear people like Rebecca pointing out how valuable an instrument technology can be when used in the right way. But you've made the point, Rebecca, that actually you have to have a rule set. There have to be clear guidelines, that there has to be a narrative, as you put it, objectives, participants, roles, and a rationale. It seems to me that technology is a two-edged sword. We can use it very destructively, or we can use it very creatively. And I hope that we can take on board your message and make sure that whatever catastrophe or pandemic confronts us, while we have time, and I don't know how long the technology is available, but certainly in the build-up to such a crisis, we can use that technology to safeguard as much of humanity as possible. Thank you very much indeed.